Islam does not come with anything that is irrational, but it does come with things that are supra-rational, i.e., rationality does not and cannot have a role to judge whether it's valid or not. It's beyond the scope of the intellect. Islam does not come with anything that contradicts the intellect, but it comes with things that the intellect might not necessarily understand, even if it does not find illogical. Islam will tell you these things, and it is possible your mind will not fully comprehend, but Islam will never tell you something that goes against, that contradicts the mind that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed you with. And when you look at the questions that these young men and women, 17, 18, 19, 20, up to the early 20s, they inevitably center around a core group of issues, all of which are modern, all of which are emanating from within a particular cultural paradigm. In other words, the questions that people of our generation are asking never even occurred to the last generation, or the generation before them, or the generation before them, all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ and before. These are questions that modern society is positing. Questions about the existence of God, sexuality and orientation, gender roles. These things did not exist. Society, by and large, accepted these things as truths. And 100 years from now, the questions that then those generations of Muslims will be asking will be completely unknown of, unthought of by the generations of our times. So, instead of being so quick to question Islam, take a step back and be just as questioning of your own questions and where they're emanating from. Instead of just jumping at the Quran and saying, why does the Quran say this? Take a step back before you get there and ask yourself, why am I asking this particular question and not another one that perhaps 500 or 1,000 years ago was at the forefront of people's minds? And when you start contextualizing yourself, look, you and I, both of us, we are products of a particular civilization, of a particular code of conduct, ethics, morality, of a particular paradigm. And the questions that are being spoon-fed to us by the context that we live in, we also should be brave enough to challenge those questions. Why are we not brave enough to challenge those questions, even as we're brave enough to challenge the Quran? Those questions will change. The Quran will remain, as we know, unchanged. This great theologian, Ibn Taymiyyah, he actually critiques this notion that reason alone will always arrive at the truth. And he brings forth such beautiful examples. First and foremost, the impossibility of even defining what is reason, what is rational, what is intellectual. What might be intellectual for us was not intellectual a generation ago. What might be rational for us was not rational 100 years ago. Rationality itself changes from society to time to place. And there is nothing that we can judge rationality by in and of itself. In fact, in our own lives, how many times have we undertaken a course of action thinking this is so logical, this is so reasonable, this is so the correct decision. And the next day, the next week, the next month, the next year, we look back and we say, what a dumb decision I made. How could I have been thinking that? We ourselves experience this. So how then can we take quote-unquote reason to be something above and beyond anything, always deriving ultimate truths from that? Now, does this mean, as I said, that Islam has nothing to do with reason? No, not at all. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to think, to ponder. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran to make tafakkur, tadabbur, tadhakkur of His signs. But if you look at the Quranic commands to think and reflect, the Quran never tells you challenge Allah's revelation. Rather, the Quran addresses non-Muslims and says, think, is Islam true or not? Think, is the Prophet true or not? Think, if this book, the Quran, from Allah or not? Once you come to the conclusion that the Quran is the book from Allah, that the Prophet Muhammad is a true prophet, that's where you use your mind. Once you admit and submit that the Quran is the book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you are not supposed to question each and every minutiae and law and wisdom. We will never understand why we pray 5 times a day and not 4 or 6 times. There's no clear-cut answer we can give. We will never understand why we perform wudu in a certain manner, why we have to do 1 ruku' and 2 sajdas in every rak'ah. It might not be something that is fully understood rationally, but neither is it irrational. It's not against reason. It's there, you just submit. Now if somebody were to say, I don't understand the wisdom in 5, well, tough luck. You've accepted the Quran. We're assuming you have accepted the Quran. You've accepted the Quran, you must accept it as a package deal. So, reason has a role and a place to guide you to the fact that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is a prophet. And the Quran is the book from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Once you submit to that, then you accept the package deal. And if you look at the questions that these young men and women ask, they're always about fiqh issues of a relatively minor nature. Why does Islam allow this? Why does the Quran say that? And they're all things to do of a legal nature. They're not to do with the basics or the essence of theology. And we do not judge the validity of a religion based upon the minutiae laws. How can Islam be true when we have to pray 5 times a day? That's not how we judge Islam. We judge Islam based on what? On theology, on purpose of life, on the fact that the Quran is a book from Allah. Once we've established that these things are true, we then accept the message as it is.